I think it's important for us to have good relations with our closest ally. I think it's important for our allies to be here to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. We've got to have good relations with the USA, but I don't think we should be rolling out the red carpet. I don't think this should be a state visit. And why do I say that? I think our closest ally is akin to a best friend. And the thing about a best friend is, of course, you stand shoulder to shoulder with them at times of adversity, but you've got to call them out when you think they're wrong. And there are so many things about President Donald Trump's policies that are the antithesis of our values in London, but also our values as a country.
But you see no distinction then between the office of the president and the occupant of that office. I mean, if there isn't a time to roll out the red carpet for the United States president, surely, you know, the commemorations that he is attending, surely that is the occasion on which he should.
Well, look, there are other close allies coming for the commemorations. They're not getting a state visit, a state banquet costing millions of pounds. And my point is this, some of the things Donald Trump has done over the last 2-3 years, Londoners find abhorrent and offensive, rolling back the reproductive rights of women, separating children from their parents on the Mexican border, introducing a ban on Muslim-majority countries, standing up and defending white supremacists, neo-Nazis and anti-Semites in Charlottesville, amplifying messages from racists in this country, walking away from the Paris Climate Accord, and I could go on. And my frustration with our Prime Minister is she's not willing to say boo to a goose.
What do you think it would do to the nominally special relationship for Donald Trump to be told that the red carpet wouldn't be rolled out?
Well, look, there's no reason at all why we can't have good relations with the USA. Look, we in London benefit from massive investment to our city from US companies, US individuals. We have this summer great American sports coming to London with Major League Baseball, and I love Americans, and many Americans love our city and our country. But that friendship means candor, and I think we should be candid with the American president, say, you know what, we disagree with you on so many things. That doesn't mean we can't still have a good relationship. We've got to distinguish the current office holder of the President of the USA and our relationship with the country and its people and its businesses and future office holders. We now know that our Prime Minister won't be around for much longer. Similarly, this President won't be there forever. And one of the things that people look back on about our approach to this President is that I think they'll regret that our government, this Prime Minister, didn't stand up more to him.
Given your obvious antipathy towards the man and given the antipathy that you display on behalf of those Londoners who you assume dislike him, there's some fairly major protests taking place on Tuesday. Can we expect to see you at the front of it?
No, I'm going to go to the protest. I think it's inappropriate. What's important, that any protest is peaceful, lawful and safe. One of the things, actually, I'm not being trite here, that the Allies fought for in the Second World War, for us to have these freedoms and these liberties, to protest against things that we find objectionable. I think it's right and proper that Londoners and those from around the country who've got concerns around Donald Trump should protest. The key thing is got to be lawful, it's got to be safe, and it should be peaceful as well.
Do you have the money to police the protests?
Well, look, the Met Police Service work incredibly hard. I've spoken to the Commissioner, I speak to her on a regular basis. She's confident that the Met Police Service were able to police our city safely over the course of the next few days of the President's visit, and also keep them safe as well, which is really important.
It's clear that there have been some pressures placed on the police, you know, and to a large extent, those from the Extinction Rebellion campaign.
Look, our police officers work incredibly hard. They are overstretched and under-resourced. That's a consequence of massive cuts from this government over the last 8-9 years. And you speak to police and crime commissioners, you speak to chief constables around the country, they have similar challenges.
But let's be clear, you're not saying that there's nothing you can do. I mean, you sit on an £18 billion budget.
And that's one of the reasons why, unlike the previous mayor, in my first 3 years as mayor, I've increased record sums the amount of monies that we give from City Hall to the police through increasing council tax, through efficiencies, through business rates.
But the way you describe it, it's more like a finger in the dike.
Well, the way funding works in this country is 80%, roughly speaking, of funding for police forces comes from central government. In London, we're losing £1 billion of funding from 2010 until 2020. So you can't escape the fact that police officer numbers have gone down, community officer numbers have gone down, police staff has gone down, police stations have closed down, and we're seeing the consequences of massive cuts in policing with the rise in violent crime.
Okay, well, let's be explicit about this. Burglary up 37% since you became mayor, robbery up 59%, knife crime up 52%. There have been, goodness only knows how many stories of young people being stabbed on the streets. There is a direct line in your mind between the withdrawal of that £1 billion worth of funding and those kids being stabbed?
There is a link. It's not the only reason. The causes of violent crime are complex. They're deep societal problems from, I'm not excusing criminality, social alienation, inequalities, poverty, lack of opportunity, lack of aspiration. There is also, as part of that mix, a consequence of making massive cuts in the police budgets.
Okay, to what extent then is it a matter of personal regret for you that London is less safe than when you took the job?
Oh, it's not less safe, that's the first thing. We've made huge progress in the last 3 years, but it's deeply upsetting to me when I meet a bereaved mum or dad, when I meet a brother or sister whose life's been changed forever because someone in their family has lost their lives to violent crime. Each death is a tragedy. You know, Neil, I've been to too many funerals and I've met too many Londoners whose life will never be the same again. And I think all these deaths that are caused by violent crime are preventable. I think had we invested in some of these young Londoners at an earlier stage, they could have been diverted away from crime. There's no excuse, by the way, for somebody stabbing somebody. Many of the victims are people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I wonder if we can turn to Brexit and first of all, those European elections. Labour lost ground here in London, rather shockingly, in fact, to many people who followed Labour's fortunes here over the years. Is it that equivocation over the second vote that cost Labour so badly?
It was heartbreaking to speak to Labour supporters, Labour activists and Labour members who couldn't vote Labour in the European elections. Some of the reasons we were given was the lack of clarity around Labour's position around Brexit. Some of the reasons were given a lack of being stronger about the fact that we've been betrayed by those who made promises to leave and we should be calling for a public vote. And there is a real concern that I've got that unless we clarify at a national level our position on where we stand in the European Union, it could lead to these people who didn't vote for us in the European elections not voting for us the next time there's an election.
I mean, let's be clear. I mean, the second referendum was clearly an issue, perhaps as much of an issue as the person that's leading the party, surely, Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, a big issue was the lack of clarity in our position on Europe. A big issue was the fact that we're not being stronger in relation to the need for a public vote. My view is quite clear. My view is that what we're being presented with now from the government is a million miles away from what was promised in the referendum campaign. In light of that, the British public, for the first time, should give us a say, do you accept this deal negotiated by the government with the option of remaining in the EU?
I mean, the Labour Party is, everyone would admit, in something of an invidious position. You know, you've got the Leave voters in the north and the Remain voters in the south. Is there a way to square the circle?
You know, sometimes leadership is about leading from the front. You want to make sure there's people following you, but you've got to be authentic and have conviction in what you believe in. We now know that Parliament's in gridlock. Parliament can't decide what is the optimal outcome. Now, actually, there's a pragmatic case now for saying there should be a public vote. So not just because you're a convicted politician, but for pragmatic reasons, give the British public a say for the first time, do you want to stay in the European Union, as imperfect as it is, reform it if you can, or do you accept the deal negotiated by the government? That will lead to, by the way, less jobs, less wealth, less prosperity. We're already seeing a consequence on the NHS and in construction and in other sectors. That's before we've left the European Union.
I suppose I should pretty quickly just check. You did vote Labour during the European election. Good. We can move on from that. Now, in all seriousness, where does the Labour Party go with all the lack of electoral success that it has had under Jeremy Corbyn's premiership? Where does it go with him at the top of the party?
Look, Jeremy Corbyn's the leader of our party. He's won but two elections to be the leader. He's got my full support.
I think those are the only elections that he has won, though.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the last time a general election was called, Theresa May, the Conservative leader, was 20 points ahead in the polls. The only reason why she called the general election was to try and wipe out Labour and to win a massive majority so she could negotiate an extreme Brexit deal with the European Union. And Jeremy Corbyn showed his abilities to campaign. I'm disappointed we didn't win the last general election, but I'm confident that if we stay united and we have a good manifesto, we can win. And that means, by the way, making sure we're clear in relation to our views in the European Union.
I wonder, to what extent do you think that being Mayor of London sets one up to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
No, listen, I'm loving being the Mayor of London. I love this city. I'm looking forward to my next 2, 3, 4 terms.
I'm perhaps thinking of maybe the chap that came before you, whether or not Boris Johnson, you feel that his time here at City Hall perhaps made him I don't know, a little bit more practical, a little bit more closer to the numbers? Is there anything that he took from his time here at City Hall that you could see translating well into his time?
Can I say, I spent my first 3 years as mayor spending too much time cleaning up his mess. The idea that Boris Johnson's record as mayor is an application for the job of being Prime Minister, I find astonishing. What I can say is I'm concerned that our next Prime Minister will be chosen by a small percentage of the population, something like 0.15% of our country's population will choose the next Prime Minister. We should have a Conservative leader who understands the need for a general election so the British public can decide whether they accept the verdict of 100,000 Tory members or whether they want to have a say and decide to rubber stamp that person as the Prime Minister, or to give us a chance, the Labour Party, to offer our country our manifesto, our offer for the future.
Sadiq Khan, thanks very much for being with us.